is going on, everybody? It is another Pop Culture Crisis movie review. We are here today to discuss the brand new Daily Wire comedy film, Lady Ballers, directed by Jeremy Boring, starring Jeremy Boring and just about everyone over at the Daily Wire. My name is Brett, and I am here with my show co-host. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Crisis Actors. It's Mary. In case you were wondering why we dropped our 500th episode and that's just seemingly disappeared, it's because we were out of town to see this premiere. I was so excited to see it, and it did not let me down.
You gotta make the face then after that.
Yeah, it was really funny. It had a lot of heart, and Jeremy Boring not only directed it but co-wrote it and starred in it, and I was really impressed with his acting skills as well.
Yep. And we have two people with us today. To my right is Taylor Silverman.
What's up, guys? I'm Taylor Silverman, and I got looped in last minute to go to this premiere. I was really excited about it. I was incredibly tired and running on very little sleep, but I laughed, I cried, and overall had a really great time with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Wesley was there.
I was also there. Yeah. I was carrying a camera most of the time.
But you saw the movie.
I did see the movie, yes.
So this movie, if you're wondering what the synopsis for this film is, it is a movie in which down-and-out former high school basketball coach Jeremy Boring, his character name is not Jeremy Boring in the film. His character name is Coach Rob, which is a great, fantastic name for a movie character. He his life isn't working out the way that he wanted after winning 3 state championships, and he decides to devise an amazing plan to get back into the spotlight by taking his old winning high school basketball team and having them compete at the World Games?
Global Games?
The Global Games, yeah. Because you can't name the Olympic Games in a movie, apparently.
And to do this, what do you do with a bunch of down-and-out players who are washed up? Well, they can't compete in the men's division. They'll get crushed. What do? You have them compete in the women's division. And what follows is a fantastic satire and commentary on the absurdity of what is going on in sports right now. And that is where this movie, one of the strongest aspects of this film is that it takes kind of an unapologetic approach at the comedy, which is what old comedy films used to be willing to do. And you don't see a lot of that anymore. A lot of people say comedy died prior to 2016. I would say it probably died prior to that even. I think Jeremy said that he blames Obama. But so I want to get out of the way and say, if you have critiques, and I do have critiques of this film, I want to be able to go through all of them. We did go to the premiere. We were invited to the premiere. Does not mean I'm not going to point out the things in this film that I didn't like about it, and there were some. But I think what this movie did best for me was actually when it got out of its own way and got away from necessarily just talking about the issue of trans women in sports and leaned into the physical comedy that a lot of these actors who are not really always considered actors, a lot of these people were guys that worked at the Daily Wire. That was when this movie felt its best to me, when you're seeing people's heads smash against lockers, when you're seeing Towel Boy getting towels thrown on him and stuff like that. That's the stuff that felt like old school comedy to me.
Yeah, it's not heavy on polemics, and you guys watching might be cautious of it because we don't want it to be shoving a message down your throat, even if it's a good message. It actually was true to form for a raunchy 2000s style comedy from that golden era of irreverent humor, and I think it did that really well.
The other commentary that I would have on that was that when it does lean into the absurdity of the trans topic, or really any of the social issues that it addresses in the film, I feel like it stopped writing for characters and it started writing as if they were taking a ChatGPT amalgamation of what people on the internet say about these things and then put it into the characters' mouths. But that was mostly at the beginning. It was mostly when Jeremy was being explained and explaining the absurdity of these issues. And what I felt is that the characters and all the actors, as the movie went on, obviously they don't shoot movies in order, they all seemed to grow more comfortable with each other and grow into their roles as it went, especially Jeremy and the young woman who plays the reporter in this film, who starts off a little rough but grows into the role of being an evil journalist really, really well.
She actually, Billy Ray Brandt, who plays the evil journalist, seductress, crazy lover of Coach Rob, she had no prior acting experience, which really surprised me because I would not have been able to clock that. She did incredibly well. And I think she might be like my favorite character from the movie, hands down.
It felt like with that one, it gets away from the higher stakes issue of trans activism and trans in sports, and it's just like everyone can agree that journalists are awful. Everyone can agree that journalists are, for the most part these days, pretty much evil. So that feels like a character. Like even if Hollywood was willing to, or wants to remain unwilling to address the absurdity of what's going on in women's sports, it feels like that is something that Hollywood should still be able to criticize, and they're not willing to do that. Like that journalist character should be able to be dropped into any Hollywood movie that's made today, and they just won't do it, even though I don't feel like that's stepping on any toes at all.
What's funny is it felt like a film that Hollywood would have made in the early 2000s. And the way that culture has shifted so drastically, they would never touch it now with how sensitive people have gotten and how politically correct people have gotten. But it was really nostalgic to films like Juwanna Mann and The Ringer, and like these films that back then you could go see in theater being released by these big companies and it wasn't controversial at all.
Yeah, you said that this really emotionally impacted you, and you were crying at certain parts. Can you tell us which scenes you were most impacted by?
So there's a scene where the girls on the opposing team, like, they're aware of what's happening and their coach is like consoling them. And I started crying because in real life, nobody did that for me. And I don't think anyone was doing that for all the girls I know who have been through the same thing in their sport. So it was nice to see, but it was also like, that's not happening in real life. In real life, you're being gaslit. You have people trying to brainwash you that this is okay and you're the crazy one. And in the whole movie, the guys on the team, they're aware that what they're doing is wrong. And I don't think that the narcissistic men doing this in real life even think about what it's like for the women who are
the other
robbed.
aspects that I found touching were Coach Rob's relationship with his daughter Winnie.
Absolutely.
The moments where he had scenes with her, they were done really well. And he mentioned that when they were writing that speech where he points out the ways that women can do certain things better than men, it was hard to write that because obviously our culture just laughs in the face at the idea that women can be empathetic and nurturing and can build communities and things like that. Like, that would be awkward to write because of our culture.
And that actually, what I think is funny is that scene was maybe my favorite scene in the entire movie. And what I think it highlights is, like, if they had been able to write the sarcastic bits for the characters where they're criticizing the culture as honestly as they wrote that, like when he gives that speech to his daughter, that feels like a character with his own views, his own history, and his own backstory, sharing how he sees things to his child. Whereas when him and the other characters are pointing out the absurdity of men and women's sports, that didn't feel like his character. It felt like the internet spewing back to me what they actually, what he actually thought that was.
That was kind of what I took away from it too. I kind of wanted the opening to be him kind of learning what was going on and not having these fully formed opinions on it. It's like when he pulled up to the house and he's like, oh, the woke teachers at the woke schools. And I was like, this feels very like, yeah, I get it.
More like a talking point than what someone would say if they were experiencing that in real life.
Yeah. And
but it also is exaggerated.
Right. And I also want to counter one thing about what you said about the journalist character. I think where this movie did it right and other movies don't is they do have characters like that. They're just us.
Yes.
And they're not satires. They're like, this is a very serious drama. And they act like that devious and maniacal. And it's like, this is your average neighbor. You know that, right? Like, you're not safe in your own neighborhood because this person disagrees with you politically. Whereas this is obviously an over-the-top satire movie where the character, like, literally is screwing the suppressor off of a sniper rifle. Yeah. And it's like, that is how we're represented in Hollywood. Like, we're maniacal, like, gun-toting lunatics who hate anybody that has a slightly darker shade of skin than us or a different lifestyle. But this is a joke. There's more than one crazy journalist in this movie, and it is obviously played extremely over the top, but with a nugget of truth in there.
I kind of liked how they included all of the crazy online catchphrases and like the journalists being so over the top, because I have encountered journalists who are exactly like that. I've been at speaking events where someone comes up to you afterwards and they start telling you how ridiculous it is that you would think that men could be stronger than women, and women are exactly the same, and they're independent, strong ladies. And though most people are who feel this way, they're absolute cowards in person, they would never say it to your face. I get comments that say those exact same things every day online, and I think it showcased how stupid it sounds when it's played out in real life.
Mm-hmm. Another thing this movie did shockingly, unbelievably well was the music was absolutely fantastic in this.
Yeah.
It draws back to other famous songs, but it's all original music that's done by, I think, Jeremy Boring's brother.
Yeah, Will Boring.
Will Boring did the music for this film, and it's like when I'm listening to it, it's just different enough from these famous songs, but it hits you the same way great sports movies used to hit you, with the soaring score. When Coach Rob is giving his speech to the team and stuff like that, that's all done in homage to the way these films were made. That opening scene where Coach Rob gives his speech to his players was perfectly done.
Yep.
Like very, very well done. And part of that is the way the music, cuts in about halfway through and it starts to build, and it all then it plateaus with Tyler Fisher's character playing the towel being pushed into the locker. Like, that's fantastic filmmaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt the exact same way. Like you, I've got a lot of pluses and some minuses on the movie, and I thought it started strong, so I have to assume that scene was shot last. Like, everybody had to look their youngest, shaved, thin, not as carrying as much weight because they're not 15 years older, and everything was just like extremely dynamic. Everybody was on point. The comedic timing was, I was like, man, wow. And then as it went, like, I could see like cracks in the production, and this, like, a huge props to just even making this movie. But this was made in like a very small amount of time in between other projects, and like incredibly impressive. But that scene being so great for me, like, raised my expectations a lot, and I don't think other scenes matched that same energy. I was really impressed to start off, and then I was impressed with the finale as well. Like, there was a lot of like, you can tell that this is a modestly budgeted movie, but that finale scene, that arena, like, that felt like for what it was trying to do. Like, it doesn't look like the Olympics, but it does. If it was like a college championship, I'd believe it. Like, it was well done. It didn't feel like it was very cleverly and wisely framed and shot to feel like a broader budget movie, and I think that deserves
they didn't
commendation.
They didn't overuse locations too much, other than the ones that make the most sense.
Yep.
Like, me and you had pointed it out, there were scenes in Sound of Freedom where they reused the same parking lot from the same angle 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
So that's where you can see the cracks in the budget and the filmmaking. This movie doesn't have this. If you went into this film not knowing what the Daily Wire was, not being like you or me who pay attention to the behind the scenes aspect of cinema filmmaking, you're not going to look at this and feel like you're looking at something of a modest budget. I don't think that the average person will look at it and see it this way.
No, I think they'll look at it and see it for what it was trying to replicate, which was that early 2000s style of irreverent humor, and it does that very well. Like, it does not feel like a today movie. Like, I will say that that is both a compliment and a detriment, because it just sort of like when you watch something with the soap opera effect and you're like, this looks different. It has that, to me at least, and I'm sure that other people who watch a lot of movies will notice that as well. But that's not a bad thing per se, and it kind of sets you up. It should look different if it's going to be this type of humor, which we haven't seen in 15 years.
And the way they pull it out together, both with the coach's speech to his daughter and the final scene at the final game, brought an almost shocking amount of heart, which is what these old comedies were supposed to do, right? You get all of it's kind of like it builds the humor, and then you put in something emotional, and then you are able to then release it with humor again. And those types of movies back in the day could take you on a unique roller coaster ride that this movie pulls off better than any comedy that I've seen in recent memory. And granted, they're not really making a whole lot of. I was looking earlier at it's like top comedies of the year, and there was like none. fun. It was like bros, and that was it. And there wasn't really anything that was really specifically for the genre. And I think that you need to have topics. I think with comedies like this, I was watching a thing with Chris Weitz. He did he was the writer of The Creator, but he did Rogue One.
Yeah.
He's a friend of Gareth Edwards, right?
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
they work together, and he's talking about how like Hollywood took the wrong lessons from American Pie. When they made American Pie, and you have this unique coming of age story.
Oh, he wrote that, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So he wrote American Pie, and it was this unique coming of age story. And the lesson Hollywood took away from it was like shove your wang in pies and do gross humor. Yeah. Which is not just like we're talking about with the Barbie movie, right? They're saying like instead of this movie that seemed to resonate with tons of women, the idea that they have is to make more movies about dolls and toys, which is the wrong lesson. Yeah. And I feel like this is a movie that got the right lessons from all of these films of the past. It understood what it needed to do. It had a story to tell, and it told that story. Right? We joked about making a sequel for it, but I don't know if that's necessarily necessary for something.
No, it's not.
This.
And I think they also did a really good job of handling the topic in a sensitive way. Because obviously this involves some narcissistic, malicious actors, but also a lot of confused, mentally ill people. And one of the characters, we find out, actually was struggling with gender dysphoria the whole time. And he has a heart-to-heart with that player on his team. And I just thought that was handled really well.
It does a very good job of doing the opposite of how the journalists paint people who disagree with them.
Yeah.
Right? It shows them as fully formed characters and human beings that have empathy, that can sympathize with your problem, that don't just see you. And I think the internet makes that worse for us these days, is people don't talk with a whole lot of empathy online, but when you talk to them in person, you're going to get a more nuanced perspective on this. This movie fleshes out the nuanced perspective of how these people see the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. If we had more of this within cinema, you might actually, and everyone took it at face value and understood that you're making this in good faith, you might actually be able to understand somebody else's viewpoint a lot better and be more willing to spend time with people that you disagree with if you see them as human beings and not monsters.
Yeah, I think, and it also, to your point, it did a good job, I think, of showing that if you're sitting on this side of this issue, the issue the movie is about, that just because this is something you disagree with, it does not necessarily indicate malice towards those individuals.
Right.
Necessarily. So, like, say you feel this way because you hate blank social group, and it's like, no, I see the solution to their issue as a different one than the one you prescribe to them, which is affirmation or whatever. And it did a good job to show that Coach Rob cares about this individual. He didn't say like, oh, you really feel this way? Well, then I'm going to unload on you as this conservative caricature.
Yeah.
Would you recommend it to people?
I would, yeah.
Would? Taylor?
Absolutely. I do think viewer discretion should be advised if you have young kids. There are definitely some scenes in the film that are a little bit more raunchy, but absolutely watch it. Maybe watch it first before you show it to your kids and see if there's anything you might want them to cover their eyes for. But it wasn't anything too extreme. But I really loved the end, how it came full circle. Going into it, I had no clue where it was going to go at the end, but it ended in a way that was to actually celebrate the young girls in the film, which like had me bawling. And yeah, it was sensitive towards the topics. It wasn't just about like making fun of everybody in the film who was doing this. I also think it was really interesting. Billy Ray Brandt.
Yes.
Her character, which she did an amazing job. I never would have guessed that was her first film. As the journalist Gwen, she was very clear that she didn't buy this lie. This was about her having a story so she could selfishly get attention and gain notoriety as a journalist. And I think that there are a lot of people who do not even believe what they're saying, but want to virtue signal to look like good people or to get attention or to make money. And that's an issue that needs to be talked about too.
Right, exactly.
Mary?
I also highly recommend, we're recording this before it releases, but it's going to be out on Daily Wire Plus tonight when you're watching this. So definitely go watch it for sure.
Well, I'm going to say don't go see it just to be contrary. No, I do think like it's a movie that has a lot to say, and one of the hardest things today is to find movies that are able to not just have an actual thing to say, a message, not just the message, but a message, and to deliver it well is not easy. I think that the people who are film buffs will point out the flaws, but I don't think that that's a reason that should stop someone from seeing this movie, especially in a market that's as starved for content that actually speaks to them as we are now. I also think that an underappreciated character, and all the people that I've seen talking about, is the woman who plays his wife.
Yeah.
His ex-wife, her name's Lexi Contursi, and she's very interesting because, you know, Matt Walsh has his cameo as this very love is love character, and she's now with this guy, right? But she, who loves this person who would agree with everything that this ideology says, has to then also learn to be disapproving of it because she can see that they're not acting in good faith, and it points out a lot of the weird middle ground there is where you don't know who genuinely believes this stuff, and her confusion that leads to disapproval, that leads to Coach Rob's coming full circle, is a very, very important part of this film, because she, as much as not as much as his daughter, but she also drives his change, because he has a fight with her towards the end that leads to his change on all of these things. So I think that she deserves a lot of credit as well for doing a fantastic job in a role that required less upfront, big acting, and more subtle acting that I think worked really, really well. So I do think you guys, if you have a subscription to the Daily Wire, I think it's worth checking out. I think in an age where comedy is as hard to find as it is, it's absolutely something that we need more of. So go check it out. If you have seen it, leave us a comment down below. Let us know what you thought of us. Are we shills? Are we wrong? Are we right? Let us know in the comments, guys. We will be back with more Pop Culture Crisis movie reviews soon. Talk to you soon. Later. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.